Even though Sandbox's current player count is the talking point for the last couple of months since release, surprisingly enough, there has been some really cool stuff being worked on in the background still. And we're going to be talking about some of these negative aspects also within this video today, so don't worry, we'll be talking a lot about the good and the bad and my own personal opinions about how I feel about the current state of Sandbox as a whole, what has to be fixed and or done, as there is some concerns, and right now there needs to be quite a bit done to really get this game to an actual appropriate, enticing offer for players to return to it. Let's start with some cool stuff the community is currently working on. Pond, a game I've discovered when I was doing my 3-day gem alert event live stream, went viral on Twitter with 300,000 people really loving the aspect of this game, as Shrimpy Cake, one of the developers, showed off gameplay, and they also mentioned that while currently the game is available only on Sandbox, eventually this will become a standalone release on Steam. Project Embrace is a multiplayer narrative-driven urban fantasy RPG framework and digital tabletop toolkit built natively within Sandbox, as it's inspired by games like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines and Deus Ex, was shown by ATR Blizzard. This looks really cool, as if you're a fan of VTM, you'll definitely be excited to see and hear that there is a game in the works on the platform. Vast is an MMO space sandbox game which obviously takes inspiration from EVE Online. The gameplay provided was players that are PvPing, and I thought this looked really cool and an interesting game to showcase, since people who most likely like EVE Online and this type of gameplay will appreciate this, as obviously this person's PC isn't the greatest. But moving on, there's not one but 2 racing games that have released on Sandbox. The first one is called Racing Club Autobahn, which is a realistic highway driving game built around traffic cutting, progression, and playing with your friends. From the trailer, it seems like it also has support for a racing setup that you would normally see within racing-styled sim videos. The game looks pretty interesting and worth checking out at some point for a future video. The second game is called Horizon Club, which is a simple racing game against NPCs. The game is still a work in progress as it's shown, but it's still pretty cool to see what is being cooked up with racing games on Sandbox. Spirit Travels, which is a game that has been ported over to Sandbox by the same developer who had made the game for a game jam in Unity back in 2025, has come to the platform. This is a really cool, visually looking game, and even though it seems fairly simple, the developer has recreated 5 out of the 12 levels and eventually will be releasing the game on the platform for anyone to play. Facebook has been showing off its new AnimGraph 2 integration inside of Sandbox. From the video shown, this updates the already existing AnimGraph 2 to the latest version that is being used by Valve in CS2 and possibly Deadlock, if they even use it, which I'm sure that they do. But this is really exciting stuff, since AnimGraph 2 is a very powerful animation blending tool that has been used since it was introduced when Half-Life Alyx came out. I'm very interested in how Facepunch is able to get access to these tools, as I'm not sure if it's from Valve directly giving them access to some of these new features, or if it's the other way around, that Facepunch asks them. I'd assume it's the latter, but nonetheless, this adds to a list of pre-existing Source 2 tools and features that are starting to be integrated directly into Sandbox, which is very awesome to see, since you don't really see any other game engine using this outside of just Valve's version of Source 2. There's also my own Sandbox horror game called Blossom, which I'll be putting out a developer blog at some point to talk about some of the new features and also some of the workflows about how I'm doing certain things like animations, since some people have been asking me. But currently, here's a preview of some of the new things that have been added, like a new upgrade store when you meet a certain character that will add more substance than just the usual running around and avoiding things. Once again, stay tuned for that when it comes out, as it's some really cool stuff that I do want to showcase. Now, outside of all of that, let's get real about some other things and talk about the not so great stuff. Starting off with game quality and clicker and idle game slop galore, as I call it, this has been a talking topic for the last 2 to 3 months. The biggest issue outside of just performance for Sandbox for many people's setups is the quality of games and seeing the influx of generic and 100% AI art generated low effort copy paste clickers and idle games that are on the platform. I get that there will always be some sort of crap on the platform, but again, I just can't really ignore it. This is just my opinion on this though. The incentive to make these types of games is obviously for profit from the play fund. Outside of 10% of these games that are made because people want to do so, I rarely do believe that there is a good chunk of clickers that are made out of passion because I like making these type of games. Again, just an opinion. You're not going to die if you don't agree with me. And yes, while there is a new requirement system and also a bot system that has been put into place by Gary to pretty much prevent malicious intent of abusing or artificially inflating numbers of players, at the moment, while it feels like most of the opportunists are striking while the iron is hot to push out as many of these low effort garbage clickers as possible on S&box, the good part is that this is not going to work for them in the long term, as many in the community have become obviously hostile towards seeing any of these clicker games. And while it's understandable that there might be newer games that are 2D and are seen as beginner games, this also does raise an interesting concern of hostility towards developers who are just starting and publishing games to the platform. Reminder, there will always be some sort of beginner developer games that are published or games that are 2D and may seem unappealing, at least to those that are not as interested, which is another thing I wanted to talk about. Interest. I'll be completely honest here. While there is many people who are ragging on S&box specifically for numbers since it's dropped significantly over the last 4 months, and it seems to be dropping every so often because of not much good content, we already know that Facepunch had dropped the ball with the way the launch went. At least that's how I felt when I talked about it before, leading up to, as I already said it would, which would be mixed. So now, 4 months later into release, as I mentioned with that video on launch day, that it wasn't looking too hot, and for very obvious reasons, because it was way too early to push the game out. Hence why it made sense that Gary decided to not do a big push to the Steam front page, as he wanted most people to find S&box organically. Because if you really think about it, the effect and mixed response to the state that it was on launch would have been even greater. But as I've said it many times, and even now saying it as some people still don't get it, that Facepunch has literally no choice but to get inside of that office and crank out updates and actively listen to feedback that the community and developers are asking for. And while they've been putting out updates every week, there's still a lot that needs to be done, like a lot. Yes, this does technically fall on the idea of developers since it's a user-generated content platform. Even according to Matt, the lead programmer on S&box, had mentioned the following: "We're just going to keep working as we have a lot of stuff coming up by year end. Lots of companies have tried and failed to launch UGC platforms. The difference here is that it is not a make or break for Facepunch. We're not spending billions like Epic Games to do whatever Fortnite UGC is. So in Facepunch's case, they can keep iterating and appealing." Matt did also mention that I could ask any questions at any time within their Discord, as they're an open book. Now, while that might be specific to the questions that I would ask, I do want to see if there's any questions that you guys have inside and outside of the community, as I did try to mention this, but I didn't get a response to this specifically. Regardless, if you do have any burning questions, let me know and I'll do my best to pass them to see if I can get an answer directly from Facepunch. As they mentioned, they do watch my videos, so that means that they're actively looking from time to time. Which leads me into another aspect, which is the community. I do understand that there has been many people who have been talking about S&box's community relating to the environment and what it is. And between different sites that either on Reddit or whatnot saying that the community is either being toxically positive or overly negative, as this does make it seem super polarizing and mixed, that the S&box community can feel like when you're someone who is just getting involved for the first time. Well, this may not be the first time that we're being allowed within something as a form of creative environment alongside with Facepunch, as many people have done this with Gary's mod. S&box's entire goal is to go outside of that sphere of Gary's mod adjacent players and more into the indie development scene. This is where an interesting clash between getting involved with the community from the outside could seem over time. If S&box's entire promise is to enable developers to use their engine outside of other already premium and also free engines like Godot, it would feel somewhat counterintuitive if even people who might be well known from parts of the indie community would come into S&box's community and then decide to leave and not bother with a project because of the vibes overall. Now, I get it. It's the internet. Learn how to pick and choose what you want to handle and or deal with, as you can just leave and go elsewhere. But again, in this case, this is a new environment that is supposed to welcome new developers from outside of Facepunch games that we all know and love to get involved with using S&box as an engine. Now, while that might be something that many are not familiar with when interacting with the community, for some, that still doesn't stop some people who want to use the engine to create stuff on it that they'll just keep at a distance or even limit interactions just so that they can work on their own projects and even focus on their long-term goals for when they create games. With my own community, I at least try to keep things as chill and respectful as possible, as that's the community that I want to try to garner within S&box. I personally think that it has potential where it matters most, which is making the games that you want outside of not having to deal with a billion-dollar corporation other than Godot, which is another alternative. But as I mentioned, in my opinion, it really doesn't help, especially in the current state in case of S&box, that if it's bleeding developers over time, there's no proper incentive outside of just making money to create these games, which of course most people want to get involved with when it comes to a new platform to do, but others will probably go and just export them or just not even bother making multiplayer games. This leads me into the current pricing in the next 6 months. Whatever Facepunch is planning to do outside of just these updates really has to be something worth coming back to, as obviously with interest and the smaller and more polished games that are nice for the short term and good to use as templates for the games that you want to create on S&box, everything currently about S&box seems at a complete standstill in my opinion, as more and more devs try out S&box, which is great, but we just need more games worth actually playing, which seems to be coming, but just very slowly, as good games take time, and unfortunately, most of the people that currently do see S&box will only see the slop and negativity from posts on social media or people that just do not care or would rather wish to see this game die entirely. This channel is dedicated to putting in the work with showing off the cool stuff that is currently on the platform for as long as I can cover this game. And for many that even tell me, stop bothering with this dead game, or why even bother continuing with this at all? It's because it's what I want to do, and I do also enjoy being able to get into game development myself, as this game has in a way brought back my interest with game development as a whole, hence why I'm making my first game on S&box and keeping it on the platform, because that's what I just want to do. And for those that are making weird claims by saying I'm only staying interested in S&box for my investment, please roll the clip. I'm willing to go and trade most of this in because I do want to take out the time to see if I can get myself a Steam frame so I can cover VR aspects of S&box. This is something I've been planning to do for quite a bit, and I feel like this is a perfect opportunity for that. So I'm more than likely going to take out the time to see if I can go and do that with this, because that's something I want to cover at some point as well. I'm going to see what I could try to do and sell some of these, because again, they're just items for me, and I can use that to reinvest back into the channel, which I will be getting and enjoying, because that was the point of why I wanted to do that in the first place. The entire point is that wherever S&box goes, if it does go up, which would be cool and exciting to see, will be awesome. If it doesn't, then I'll just go and do something else like any other normal person would. I do this in my spare time, and it's a fun creative outlet for me to talk about something that I love, which is video games, and to do something I also love, which is creating things, which includes videos, which also talks about games in those videos. Regardless, S&box to me is an interesting game. Currently, it has a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed, and there is a lot of potential and cool stuff that is being worked on. We'll have to see how the game will fare within the next couple of months, as a game gen again is very much needed, and I don't know where that's all going currently, but that's all we have for this video. So feel free to leave your own personal thoughts and burning questions in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.